Hello, let's take a look at complex numbers and converting between Cartesian form and polar form. They tell us to express the following number in polar form. So this number is given in Cartesian form. In other words, z is equal to root 3 minus I, which is the same as x plus I y. So I have my real part and I have my imaginary part. If I were to go and plot this on my Argand diagram, so remember we have our real axis and our imaginary axis, I'm going to say this is root 3, so it's positive on the real axis, and minus 1i, which will give me my point here. So this point here I notice is, or my complex number is in the fourth quadrant. So we should always remember that cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant and sine is going to be negative in the fourth quadrant. So when we want to convert it to polar form, we want to write it in the following format: r and then cosine of my angle plus I times sine of my angle. So what I have here is r. R represents the modulus. So r is the same as the modulus of z. Now, if I want to calculate the modulus of a number, I'm going to say the following: the square root of, and I take my x and y values. So in this case, it will be root 3 squared plus minus 1 squared. Remember, minus I is minus 1i, and this will give me 2. So we have calculated r to be 2. This is my modulus of my complex number. The next step will be to find the angle. So if I want to find the angle, I'm going to work with cosine here. So I notice that my x movement was root 3. Remember, if you struggle with this, it might be easier to use my little identity triangle, which I'm going to have here as 1, 2, root 3, and my angle here will be 30, or I can also write it as pi over 6. So this is in radians and this is in degrees. So cosine says opposite over hypotenuse, so therefore cosine of my reference angle, whatever we make it, will be, in this case, root 3 over 2, and therefore I notice that my reference angle is, in this case, pi over 6. But we've already seen that it's in the fourth quadrant, so we know that it is negative pi over 6. So if I want to go and write my complex number, r, cosine of negative pi over 6 plus I sine of negative pi over 6. I can simplify this, my r is going to be a 2. So I can simplify this to CIS form, so 2 CIS and negative pi over 6. Of course, we can also notice that cosine of negative pi over 6 will become cosine pi over 6 is positive minus I sine pi over 6 because I'm moving in the negative direction for my sine. Here is my complex number written from Cartesian form into polar form.